Kings, Queens, I trust you're well. Erikaa here, and I am going to be interviewing my friend Shophar, and I'll share more about that background. But I wanted to just really share the intentions. The intentions is to create a conversation around our intimacy, around sex, and all the taboos. So I'm here to I'm actually just gonna invite him for my good friend. Hello.
Hey, peace, sis. How are you?
Good. I'm looking forward to this interview. I've been doing so much work with my brothers, and I'm just extremely excited to see what's going to open up.
For sure. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
appreciate you reaching out and for making room for us to do this. Uh,
Yeah.
this is going to be good. It's timely. It's right on time, and definitely appreciate it. Shout out to Kirti. I just see you joined.
Cool. Oh, that's her. I was like, who is that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I wanted to just like kind of introduce you. Not a formal introduction, but I met you at New Year's Eve. That was actually the day that I met um the love of my life. So he knows that if he's watching it, shout out to him. I'm
Yeah.
like blushing. I remember that you and Kurti did this amazing I don't know if it was a workshop, but it was very intimate. It was very like a lot of sexual energy. We were talking about a lot of deep topics like polyamory, open relationship. And it was just so insightful to really like, see other possibilities within relationship. But my favorite part was definitely just like the movement, um, because I know that you work around sexuality as well as I. And I wanted to say there was one thing that really caught my attention. I was watching a YouTube video with you and Kurti, and you guys were talking about the Chinese meridians, which is something I definitely want to talk about. Like, I want to know, like, I know I'm like going ahead, but that's just some like that's one of my curiosities is how does the Chinese meridians relate to sexuality? Before we go into it, I wanted to just introduce you, and maybe you can introduce yourself to the viewers for those that don't know who you are, don't know your work, don't know like your philosophy. But I know today we're going to talk about S.E.X. and you have your whole um, philosophy around that.
Yeah. Well, I can explain to him. I feel like you kind of given the feel of the introduction. So I'll give the formal words. Yeah, so again, I'm Shophar, and I do energy work around sensuality. I'm also an author. I have a book called Sacred Orgasmic Living, and what the work is about is SEX, sensual emotional exchange, and that's helping us to be able to. The sensual is addressing the body, so that which makes us sensual. The emotional part is the component that a lot of times in sex is not addressed, especially by the masculine energy. A lot of times, and then the X is the X factor. That's the consciousness. That's our awareness, and with our breath, that kind of weaves and connects the two, the sensual, emotional, and puts all of them together. So, what I say, Erica, is that I'd like to my mission statement is to help transform and evolve the way people think and feel about sex.
Absolutely. And as soon as you say that, the number one thing I get a lot from clients, especially male clients, is dogma. Like that's one of the core emotions that I clear, which is the metal element. The metal is about like the unconscious, the deep thing. And for me, like I've had a lot of shame around religion, growing up Catholic, Mexican, being chased by the chancla, and if you don't believe in this, then you're going to go to hell. You have to save yourself for marriage, and only good girls save themselves. And so there's like so much like ideology that has held us back from expressing And I definitely feel like what you're doing is God's work on this planet by doing that.
Oh, I appreciate that. I appreciate it. It's okay for good girls to give it up.
I know, and I look like a good girl right now. I look.
No, it is you know, and I see what you do and the work that you're doing as well, and I do feel like you said, this is literally the Lord's work. Us helping the Hubean family to remember at this time, especially, and with all this going on, the some of us are wearing signs that say "I can't breathe," which is and then all the things that have been erupting racially and everything. Like, this is the perfect time for, as Marvin Gaye says, some sexual healing, and for sensual healing. I use the word sensual more because when I say sex, people think of the genitals, and no doubt they're invited to the party too, but it's a way bigger conversation than just the genitals. We are these vast beings that right now in your room and in my room and the people watching and through time and space, those who will watch us in the quote unquote future, our energy is going through time and space, and that's all part of sensual emotional exchange. That's all part of sex. So limiting us to just our genitals is really doing each of us a big disservice.
Absolutely. I mean, I've never heard of anyone using the word sensual healing versus sexual healing, but I get it that when you think of sexual healing, it's like I immediately think about like Tantra or like longer sex instead of like really slowing down and taking your time. And even the word healing gets overused. It's a buzzword, and it's actually about completion. And I feel like completion comes with emotions, right? And that's the one thing that a lot of couples have trouble with. It's like connecting. And I remember having, I did a lot of like hands-on tantra work, and I remember like going to see a couple and they just wanted to get to the end. They just, okay, like I want to feel sex, I want to feel sexy. But when I was looking at the girl's eyes, she was just not there. She was afraid to like really ask for what she wants. She doesn't know what she wants. And it's interesting because I've had that. I've had times where I'm like, I actually don't really know what I want. Or like what's really behind that. Maybe there's an actual story that's holding me back from asking. One of the things I remember, like with partners, this is like a thing that I've had coming up, is like I feel like you won't get your needs met because maybe I'll be boring, like maybe you'll be tired of me. And I feel like that's kind of like a story in people's mind, and maybe you can speak on that.
Yeah, I think you touched on some really good things there. We come to the bedroom with a lot of stories already playing, like other scenarios, other thought patterns and memories, and what ifs. And the truth is, if any one of those things are going, if we think about it like a phone, like the cell phones that we're on right now, those are apps that are running in the background. And if those apps are running in the background, they're taking away the energy from that moment as far as the connection with the lovers. Uh, and so we want to close those apps down, or at least diminish the role that they're playing in that moment. And a big part of what can bring us into the moment is our breath. We always have that. There's other things, there's other tools, there's other technologies, but for me, the most simple is always the breath, because that's the life force. If we stop breathing, we're done. So remembering the breath and bringing that into the bedroom or wherever we're having our fun at, that's
Yeah.
the keys.
Yeah. I'm moving because battery's low.
Oh,
But yeah,
perfect.
absolutely. And is the audio still clear? Can you still hear me?
I can definitely hear you.
Okay, cool. So yeah, actually, what you were talking about is the thing that Azria and I talked about, and I think you guys connected. I love like the whole bromance, guys having each other, and we were talking about how this idea, it's like a personal development thing, programmings. Yeah, I mean, growing up with the TV and like watching certain uh like before memes, there was like the TV, there's Sesame Street, there was like certain like shows. And I felt like I would live into the stereotype, I would live into Mexicans are lazy, or you know, again, I came from like such a Catholic background that I was told, this is what sex is. It's all about procreation. And, sex is not just about getting to the end. It's not about the goal. It's really about the moment.
I totally agree with you. And you know, Erica, you hit on something really profound there, because I think two of the major fears that go into the bedroom for both sexes, or both beings that go into the relating, is number one, pregnancy, and number two is pleasure. It's like, well, goddamn, what else we gonna do? You know, I'm fearful around pleasure. So as soon as something starts to feel good, I'm shaming myself up, and then I'm also scared about, you know, getting you pregnant, or you know, or you're in there worried about getting pregnant. That's what's crazy about this whole not crazy, but this is what that is working against us right now. And when it comes to sex, is that we have these primal you know, tendencies or urges, and then because there's an urge for the feminine to get pregnant. That's what the feminine wants to do. It comes online at a very young age, and go forth and be fruitful. I mean, and then the other thing is, like, we have this amazing body that can be stimulated in so many different ways because it wants to feel pleasure. And how interesting that two very powerful energies that we're bringing that could be working to our advantage in the bedroom, they become our worst enemies.
Oh, yeah. It's like the two polarities, you know, pregnancy and pleasure. And sometimes in pleasure is like, I want your babies, or you're like in the moment, you're like, oh my God, I would love to have your babies. Oh, did I just say that? Right. And sometimes it's good to talk about the shadow, like having those conversations before. One thing I know, like in Tantra, is like creating a container, like really speaking into like, what are you holding back? I mean, everyone has like their tools or their container conversations, but yeah, I'm curious how you navigate like those conversations if it comes up within your relationship. I'm not sure if that's okay to talk about that, because I know Kirti's on here, but you guys you're both equally like amazing.
Yeah. Well, you know, Kirti has done a lot of work. She's done a lot of the inner working, so she's not bringing some of those primal fears into it. That being said, when we
Said,
she said, talk about it. When we are working with clients and stuff, though, Erica, what we do see is that one of the things that help the feminine actually get to a place of moving past those things, or being able to start to process those fears, is if the masculine, and I keep saying masculine and feminine energies. I just want to point this out to the listeners, again, the people listening now and in the future, that we're talking about energy. So this can be same sex. This is not anything to do with genitals. We're talking about energies. So the masculine energy and the relating, if they've done a certain amount of work, and if they're being present to a certain level, it allows the feminine to actually go into a place of deeper and deeper trance. And the deeper into trance, the deeper into relaxing, what ends up happening is that the gatekeeper, the mind, begins to put his shield and his sword down a little bit. You know, it's still there, and that is not that part of our being is not the enemy, but it's just been given some really fucking stringent guidelines as far as to what to allow to happen or not happen. You know what I mean? So if another powerful masculine energy comes into the relating and allows for that sentry, that guard, to put down its guard a little bit, now you start to go deeper and deeper into anything is possible. And that's where we become more and more orgasmic, is when the gatekeeper has relaxed some.
Oh, wow. And I'm guessing this is the work that you do with men, or is this what you do in your like facilitations?
Yeah, so I have a program for men called Chi Up. Have been doing energy work. You know, coaching for men for a while now. But I'm actually having a whole full 6 to 12 week program around that. And one of those things that the men will be learning in this program is exactly that process. Is you talked about, so this would be a perfect way to segue into the meridians, the Chinese traditional Chinese meridians, is to be able to understand, like, okay, that each one of our major organs has a propensity to hold a different emotion. And when certain quote unquote negative emotions come up, or as Kirti and me like to call it, soil emotions, because they're more like the dirt, the soil that things grow from. They're not bad. It's just that, you know, fear and anxiety and nervousness, worry, these different emotions, when they're not transmuted, when the soil is not turned over, they can be a negative thing at that point. So one of the things that the work does is that we help men to be able to realize what is that emotion that they're feeling, so to get more embodied, to get more in the moment, because a lot of us men, we're disconnected from our body in a certain way. We're not in touch with our feelings. And then once they start to get adept at that, then they're able to start feeling like, oh, my lady is feeling sad. And because I know what's going on with that, I know where the energy may not be moving in her body. Let me touch her in an area that the energy will flow energy into that part of the body. And once you get adept enough at that, it's like, that's what allows for more and more orgasmicness.
Mm-hmm. And what can the woman do? Because I know that you're talking about the masculine. What is something the woman? I mean, I can share my personal experience. I mean, for me, it's like it goes back to childhood. It goes back into like noticing where's the fear and where did this start from. So like, you know, with all the news and all the interesting things that is happening in the world, I notice that my codependency and my neediness gets higher when I'm looking at all the astrology reports, or I'm like, you know, looking at all the things that are happening. And in a way, it's almost like, okay, this is actually, how can I become my own provider? So one of the things that has helped me shift is like, how can I father myself? What does my masculine need? So really like having a deep conversation with my masculine. And I think like women doing work around the masculine is super, super important for me. Like the reason like women working around their masculinity is important is because they find a balance. Like, yeah, I could say journal and dance and just be feminine, but it's really about, I think the work involves getting to know your masculine side. But that's my personal experience.
I love that. Shout out. I'm not really good on IG lives. I meant to set that disclaimer too, like, you know, for the family that's joining. I tend not to look at it to see. I'm paying definitely just attention to the person that I'm speaking to usually. But I saw Brother Halim. I saw you on here, so shout out to you. I love everything you said there, Eric. And first of all, let's be very clear. S.E.X, sensual emotional exchange, starts first with ourself. So we play with the polarities in ourself first, even before we go to a partner, even before we go to trying to connect with someone else. We need to be running those polarities and understanding the rhythms and polarities and vibrations in ourself first. And so I love that you talked about addressing the masculine in yourself as the feminine. And then from there, when you're actually in the bedroom, now you're stepping in there with a masculine energy. And this is very hard for ladies, and I know, because of all the shit that has happened to women collectively and then individually. But the word that I'm getting ready to say is almost like a 4-letter word, is vulnerability. And another one that doesn't sit well with a lot of women is another one I'm getting ready to say, and I'm gonna let it come out my mouth, ladies: allowing. That's very hard. Hard, I know
The wheel
sometimes.
of consent. I know what you're talking about. Yeah.
Is to allow yourself to be in a place of receiving, because there's a tendency to want to do something. It's like, okay, well, what do I have to do? And really, that's the beauty when you show up with a conscious masculine energy in the bedroom, is you don't have to do nothing but allow.
Okay. What's the difference of allow versus vulnerability? Like, how would that show up? Like, what's an example of that? Because I'm a visual person, so I need. Did your Instagram Okay,
Sorry,
there
you
you
hear
go.
me?
I was like in the cusp of like the best part of the discussion.
Uh, yeah, no, I'm sorry, it froze up there for a second. Um, uh, so could you repeat that? You said, what is the difference between allowing and vulnerability?
Yeah, and I also said I'm a visual person, so I like to like I kind of like picture it in my mind. I mean, I know the definition or the book, the terminology, the concept, but I like examples.
I think the biggest thing, and right now, I invite all of the family right now, uh, for all of us to just join in this, is more of a feeling. So let's all close our eyes and know this is a big ask, but let's just go into a breathing right now, just breathing and allow ourselves to feel as we breathe. If you're driving, I would say don't do that right now, but anybody else, if you're in a good space and place right now, and I would say right now, and I'm not trying to be like Confucius say, but it is more like this because it's not really words that can really say what the vulnerability or allowing is. It's like as we do the in breath, there's a certain allowing that the lungs is doing right now to allow and make space for the air, for the wind, for the spirit to go into the body and then out. There's a vulnerability there in closing our eyes. Anytime we close our eyes, we don't know what's around us. So I would say that vulnerability is stepping or going into the unknown. That's like closing the eyes, right? And then the allowing is like the breath going into the lungs. So the reason why I did it that way is because now it's embodied. Again, vulnerability is closing our eyes and not knowing. It's going into the bedroom and you don't know what's getting ready to happen. That's vulnerability. And then allowing is just as easy as our in breath. So I think that's better than, and we can all open our eyes now. That to me, um, connecting it to the eyes and the breath, the allowing and the vulnerability is, I feel like that's better than giving a verbal definition. And
That
then we,
was
and then we just expand on
picture
it.
perfect.
What'd you say?
I love what you said about vulnerabilities where you're closing the eyes and the breath is the allowance, right? You're allowing the breath to just come to you. You don't need to do anything, you just allow.
Right.
And just experiencing that, I felt like I didn't need to like go deeper. I didn't need to ask or conceptualize because like the soul knows, like our soul knows these ideas. We just don't allow because it's the
Is it?
mind that gets in the way.
I love what you said there, Erica, because Tantra. Um, those of us that are not Hindu speakers, it's a little hard. So we say Tantra or we say Tantra,
Tantra.
but it's more like Tantra. But Tantra is really, especially for the feminine, it's a coming home. I've heard that Tantra was actually created to help men for us to become embodied. If we talk about the great yoga and consciousness and how as human beings, we have forgotten our connectedness to the all or to the creator, to prime creator, to God, whatever we want to call it. Um, and as we have come into a place of forgetting, we came up with different technologies and different religions, different things that would remind us about that connectedness. And Tantra was one of those technologies. But the feminine is naturally tantric. The masculine tends to be more mental plane, which is fine. It's not, one is not better than the other. It's just when we put an overemphasis on one or the other, and that's what we currently see in our current world.
Mm-hmm.
So I say all that to say that the exercise that we just did around vulnerability and allowing, the reason why it may resonate with some people, especially with the feminine, is because you already know. You already know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, Tantra, I did a video about me eating food, and it was really interesting because like the intention of was like really having a relationship with food, and it was surprising because most of the women that messaged me were mothers, and they were
Mm.
saying I got really emotional watching you eat because I
Mm.
realized that I don't know how to really enjoy or slow down and like notice the colors, the sensations. Like I feel like Tantra is like really getting to to be with the elements, to be with the now, you know, like it's just like intimacy. And intimacy is everything. Like we're having an intimate conversation, even though we're not physically there. Intimacy is everything. Intimacy is like the good emotions, it's the bad emotions, and I don't want to label it because I know that people like to label good and bad. But intimacy is everything. It's the shadow, it's the light, it's the darkness, it's the brightness.
I love what you're saying there, Erica, and I think intimacy is one of the things that can change our world. Is when we become intimate with each other as human beings, and I say human beings, not human. For me, a big part of my becoming more intimate with creation is decoding my language. So I found for me, just saying human even is still putting the man above the masculine above the feminine. You know, so I say hue beings, hue being that we have a full spectrum of colors, from beautiful dark midnight to pale, you know, beautiful white pale porcelain, and everything in between as hue beings. And decoding the language and everything is important. I forgot my train of thought. Hopefully it'll come back. Oh, intimacy. uh if we were to be more intimate with each other as beings, if we were to be more intimate with life, racism and these different things, these different isms that we see in life would actually start to clear up. It's a lack of intimacy and knowing each other's stories and connecting with each other.
Absolutely. Like extremely important is to like get to know each other's stories. Because I feel like we're so divided by the news. We're so divided by people's opinions that we're not really getting to know, like, where are you from? What's your childhood like? What was your favorite thing to eat growing up? You know, like simple things like that. Like, why do you love what you do? Why do you think what you do? And one of my favorite videos, one of my favorite TED Talks is about this guy, and I mentioned this in a previous chat. Um, this man interviewed someone from the KKK, like the Grand Master of the KKK. I don't know if you've seen that TED Talk. I have to send it to you.
Mm.
But basically, he just wanted to have some coffee. Someone's like reacting. But the thing is, what I loved about it is he was just curious. He wasn't like coming from a judgment. He wasn't coming from, um, you know, his own projections. He was like, I really just want to know, like, why do you hate what you hate? And after being curious, it actually, the Grand Master left the, you know, the organization. And that was just because he was living in love. And Tantra is love. Like Tantra is love. You know, if you're avoiding these topics, we're avoiding ourselves.
I agree.
Mm-hmm.
I agree. Yeah, we're avoiding ourselves. We're kind of being a grand wizard of sorts to ourselves, right? You know, burning crosses in our own minds and our own hearts. That's something that we're doing if we're not, you know, cognizant and bringing awareness. And I love what you're saying about getting to know each other's stories, and this is the thing, is really feeling them, really taking the time to be embodied. Because it's one thing for me to say, oh, Erica, I understand what, you know, I understand where you come from, and but that's still a mental plane thing. It's not until I actually take the time to actually feel the other person and have it register somewhere in the physical body. It should register somewhere in the physical body that I feel your story. When we start to do that, we're going to start to see changes.
Absolutely. And this is what the world needs. Like we're entering, actually, it seems challenging. It seems challenging that we're entering like this period of time. And I also think that we need it. This is like
Yes.
an unpopular opinion. A lot of people are like, well, when are we going to get back to normal? When are things going to get normal? Like that's like the buzzword right now. It's like, when it was things going to be a lot easier? But why do we want things easier? Like we're here to grow. We're here to, like, Earth is a school ground. It's a playground, um, to like grow. Like we're not, we don't know when our last breath is. And I think this is where your S.E.X comes into play, because you said that it relates to being with ourselves. Like how can we be intimate with ourselves without needing multiple things.
Right, right. Is a returning back to, I love something that you said on your page. Let me see. Uh, that more becomes unraveled. That the more becomes unraveled, and we begin to realize that the sensuality of the world is already providing. I got that off of your page that you said, and I thought that was dope. That it's like we already have the more. We're looking for more in life, more in life, and the truth is that we've already been given more. We've already attained. Enlightenment is already here. And if we can just enjoy the process, and the ups and downs of it, the challenges in life that we're going through, especially right now, trigger warning. I do think that they are. It is for the. In other words, there's nothing that really can ever be against the God consciousness. All if the Creator is all, in everything that we see is a reflection of what we would call Allah, God, Brahm, whatever. If we are all aspects or a part of that, then even the challenges still work out for the quote unquote good. And I know that's getting a little deeper and esoteric and everything, but there comes a place where we can actually start to feel this in our body. And I believe the beginning of that feeling is what we call orgasm.
Orgasm. Yeah. And when I think of orgasm, it's not just like the liquid coming from our genitals, it's also coming from our eyes, right? The vulnerability. Like, we have like salty tear ducts, and yeah, it's salty. Emotions feel salty. One of my favorite quotes by my favorite sex educator is orgasm is a form of tears. And so when we allow ourselves to feel even like the yucky emotions, we get to feel our what did you say about human? It's not really human being, it's
human being. Yeah, human being, that's what I say. Yeah.
And I wanted to like kind of pivot into like more of a deeper conversation around relationships, because Curtis said you have permission to talk. This is where I want to get into the conversation. How do you guys like unpack before you make love? Like how do you guys like deal with the yucky to like really have a transformative sexual experience?
It's a couple of ways. So this, for any of the masculine listening, again, if you're just tuning in, when I say masculine, I'm not talking about genitals, so it doesn't mean you have to have a penis. But for those who hold the masculine energy in the relating and any given time, one of the things that I do is realize that you're making love all of the time. And so rather than like, okay, I'm gonna burn the candles tonight, and she's gonna put on some lingerie. All of that's beautiful. That sets a certain tone, but really the tone is being set at morning during the breakfast. And when you're going through your day or whatever, you're pumping gas. It's all of these different moments that we're being present and making love to the moment that sets us up for a different experience in the bedroom. Especially if we bring that intention and there are some times when Kirti and me, we may already set an intention that we're going to make time that night or when we get home to connect and everything. So you may even, set a time for it. Then a lot of the times it's spontaneous, right? But the bigger answer is we become more tantric in the rest of our life. So it becomes this ebb and flow where it's not this special thing that, okay, now I'm going to set the mood. Like I'm always making the mood, and I remember going to one of the 3 tantric masters that, I know I'm saying a lot to answer your question, but I'll say it more succinctly at the end. I went to go see one of the tantric masters that I learned from. I actually took my girlfriend at the time and my mom, and we were talking and everything, and she was getting ready to get a session with him, and my girlfriend was about to get a session with him, and I remember talking to him, and he said something about how he saw me with my mom, and he was like, "Man, I can tell when the masculine energy in a woman, when a woman isn't having someone be present with her, and everything." And I was like, wait a minute, I'm present with my lady, but he was talking about me even being present with my mom and being present with the feminine in general. And that's the thing, as the masculine, if we start to just be embodied, maybe we don't play our music so loud because maybe there's kids around. It's all these different interplays that the masculine just becomes more conscious of its effect on the feminine.
Yeah. So it's about, like you were talking about, making love in every moment, and also being able to be masculine with all the women in your life, not just your partner. And that's important, you know, because like the one emotion that kind of creates like that division is jealousy, right? It's envy. And my question is, how do you relate to each other? How do you navigate when that comes up? Because that's like one of the other popular questions I get, you know, working into the space.
Right. I think there's a process, and Kirti and me, not too long ago, shout out to Progressive Love Academy, we got coaching from a couple that they have been married 23, 24 years, and the first 10 years was monogamous, and then the last 13, 14 years have been, you know, open or poly. Well, I don't think they use the term poly, they say open relating. Kirti and me are not on that path yet. We are actually monogamous, and you know, but we do what we like to what we call the relating that we do is honest relating. So it's just being honest that, hey, that person was attractive. You know, there's no connections, there's no connecting of the genitals or, you know, oral sex, none of that going on right now. But we are at least honest about our other attractions and being, because there's some people, Erica, like we can't even bring up that we find another being outside of our relating attractive. And matter of fact, we can't even bring up the people that, you know, some people call them exes. I don't like to call them exes because we haven't X'd them out of our life, right? Hopefully, if they were a good person, you may not be with them anymore. But so I like to call them past lovers, you know. But some people, we're in such tightly bound relating, and we haven't done the work around our jealousies and insecurities that we can't even bring out anybody else. I've even seen where people get jealous about a brother or a sister, a sibling, or a close friend. This to me is madness.
That is, yeah. And I really like how like you use like these code words, like you reframe it as, you know, past lovers versus ex, because it's so interesting. Like even during Mercury in retrograde, it's like, oh, be careful, like your ex might come back into the picture. And there's an interesting charge, right? Like it's an interesting like consciousness. But when you talk about past lovers, it's like, yeah, they were a lover and they were in the past. There's nothing wrong with them. There's no regrets. But it's almost like when we do mention the word X or X factor, it's very taboo. It's like, don't touch that. Don't enter that restricted zone.
Right.
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 And
Yeah. No.
I think this is what we do, right? As coaches, as healers, as game changers, like we change the languaging. We bring that awareness, because words create spells, right? Like music, the things that we watch, the programming.
Well, and I love what you said earlier, Erica, about Tantra being about love. And if we're talking like that's why I love, like in different cultures. In English, we've kind of lost a lot. Sometimes I don't even call it the English language. I call it the English languish, because we kind of languish with the vibration of these words. We just say love, and I love hot dogs, and I love my woman, and I love my car. Like we just throw the word love around a lot, right? But in other ancient cultures, they had different words to distinguish the different vibrations of the different frequencies or feelings. And like for instance, in the ancient Greeks, they had a word called agape. And agape meant unconditioned or unconditional love. Because most of what we say that we love, we don't really, it's not agape. There's conditions around it. And so when we come back into our tantric remembrance and we start to remember ourselves as tantric beings, our ability, our willingness to have unconditional love keeps expanding. And yes, that will include so-called exes too. We still love them as well, whether they were, you know, quote unquote good or bad to us. Even if they were bad, we still learned from it. So we still even have agape for that. So really, when we find ourselves with all these conditions and these restrictions and tension, first of all, that's not orgasmic. So that's going to fuck us up with our orgasmicness. And it also undermines the potential of what the relating can be in this moment.
Absolutely. Because when you just, I feel like it just comes down to acceptance, accepting what is. And that was a big lesson for me, accepting my relationship with my own mother. Like, you know, part of my story is she put me into a mental institution because I was like, didn't sleep. I was going down many rabbit holes, and I was just so angry, and I was just always attacking her. And my friends like, the moment you accept her, the moment you finally let it go, the world will be yours.
Mm.
Like everything will shift. And I didn't get it until I finally just like had a moment where I just looked at her in her eyes, and I was like, I'm just gonna eye gaze with my mom.
Oh, wow. Nice.
Yeah, and it was very uncomfortable. And I did it with my aunt, and there was like so much harmony, so much peace. I haven't done it in a while, but I was like, wow, I realized that I'm just like my mom. I still have like some restrictions, I still have like some hardness. But as soon as I did that, I noticed that my relationship with the masculine deepened. And it's interesting because like the more that we shed certain walls within our relationship with our parents, like everything changes. um so yeah, that's my little story of mine.
No, that's a big story. And I think you touched on something very important for all of those listening through time and space. Is the parent wounding, right? You know, is the wounding that goes on for us with the people that we call our mothers, you know, our fathers too. And then for the grandmother, I'm talking about the feminine energy in general. And I think there's a wounding for a lot of us as human beings now on the planet. We feel wounded around being nurtured. I know that was something that you said on your page. It's about, you talked about nurturing sex, and sex being nurturing. Um, there, because of all of the different wars and traumas that all of us have experienced collectively as human beings. There is a trauma that about not being nourished by the mother, not being protected by the mother, by creation itself, and that is a collective consciousness thing that we all suffer from.
Yeah, absolutely. Like nourishment isn't just like how, I mean, like the first thing I thought about was being breastfed.
Mm.
um and everyone, it's not, I don't think it's just limited to being breastfed. It's also like, how did they talk to you growing up? Like for example, my sister would nourish me by coming over and reading books to me because my mom didn't read to me, and it's not her fault. Like, she didn't speak English. She did the best that she could with like, hey, here's the TV, this is how you're being nourished. But what my soul was seeking is, I needed connection. And so that's what my sister gave to me. And I think the more that we start to like understand why we are, how we operate, how we talk, how we think, it always comes back to our role models. Our first role models are always our parents, even if they didn't do the best job. You know, they, that's what they learned. Heal people, or some people would say hurt people, hurt people.
Right. I like the twist you put on it though. Heal people, heal people.
Yeah.
I'll start using that one too.
Well, that's
Um,
what I actually heard that from someone, but I saw that on someone's post that they say heal people, heal people.
mm, I love that. I love that. As we come back into the remembrance of who we really are, you know, there's work to be done around, you know, undoing those ancestral wounds, you know, because our parents, like you said, your mom did the best she could. She, you know, in many instances, the hurts and the traumas, the things that are passed on to become generational curses, um, is not ill intention. It's not done purposely, you know, and it's really the God force is in all of us, just really just trying to reawaken. But now that you're an awakened being, now that I'm an awakened being, now that those listening are awakened beings, we don't have to perpetuate that and send that to the next generation. We get to that gets to end with us now.
It does. I mean, as soon as you said it gets to end with us, I thought about I don't know if you saw that video with the three generations of the black guys. Like, you know, it was at a protest, and he's like, and the black guy was screaming, and he was like, we can't do it like this anymore. Um, we have to change the ways that we were, because like he was just so angry. And I'm probably like butchering how to explain it, but I'll have to send you that video. I'm all about pop culture, but what I wanted to say is like we definitely get to change. We become the cause, by having these conversations, by like stepping into the unknown, and just being role models with the language, with the words that we're choosing, um, and just choosing, like, who are we being at the end of the day before we take that last breath? Are we choosing love, or are we choosing fear? Because I'll be honest, sometimes I do have that fear-based story, but I said, you know what? I want to make sure that before I take that last breath, that I'm thinking about gratitude.
I love it. Acronym that Kirti and me use in our work is life, LIFE, and that's living in full expression, or living in full embodiment. And the more that we become embodied, and we come in contact with our emotions, and knowing that, okay, I am fearful in this moment, or I am, the more that we are starting to catch what soil, aka negative or soil emotions are coming up, and then we learn the inner alchemy, the microcosmic orbit, and zazen breath, and these different breathing techniques to actually help us transmute and alchemize these emotions and bring them up to a higher vibration. The more that we get adept at doing that, then the more that we, as human beings, we get to have a more enjoyable life, and
Yeah,
enjoy.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah. Healing the men woman relationship starts with breath.
Yes.
Um, gosh, I have like so many questions, but I definitely agree that just these tools that have been around for thousands of years, um, it's always available to us. Like how you just like led us through that breathing and just closing our eyes, like that got me back into my heart. And that's a free tool. You have that forever.
Right.
Um, and I say that because on my spiritual path, which is the same thing as my sexual awakening, I thought it was about like researching and, trying to like learn what to say, or like the how-to videos. It's not about a how-to. Once you get to know who you are, remember who you are at the end of the day, um, then nothing will impact you. Nothing will take away your light. And I was like learning earlier about the fire meridian, because I really want to talk about the elements.
Sure.
Um, I heard that if you have a Shen imbalance or a fire imbalance, a fire deficiency, then if you have a fire deficiency, you don't know who you are, you don't know why you're here. And my theory is, if you have a fire imbalance, you probably don't know what you want in the bedroom. You probably don't know how to really ask for what you want.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
The heart, or the fire element, is said to be housed in the heart, and the shin, the consciousness. I think there's a reason why the sun is called the soul. And then you have the word corona, meaning like the sun also, or the crown that the sun has. But then the corn, with our heart, our corazon in Spanish. There's a lot of interconnections with these words. That's the fire element, our heart. And when that is not shining brightly, when we have clouds around it, we are going to be cloudy about our purpose and what it is that what we're here to do. Um, uh, and also, love will not be able to come out or come in. We won't be able to show up and really receive or give love in different ways, or there be conditions around it, right? So these are some of the ways that I feel like the shin, or the consciousness, as you said, can be affected by, if the energy is not flowing through what the fire, or the heart meridian.
Yeah.
And the beautiful thing is that there's places, if we don't, if once we start learning the inner technology of it, there's places on the genitals, there's places on the hands and the feet that we can touch that will open up the heart.
Oh, yeah. Like, are you talking about like massage or, acupuncture?
I'm talking about all of those, and I'm also talking about. So remember when we talked back about the vulnerability and allowing, if the feminine really goes into a state of deep trance, the deeper in trance that the feminine goes in sex and enter in that way, uh, you don't even have to. Sometimes you barely have to touch. You don't have to massage. Sometimes it can get so sensitive that you even just think of going to an
Mhm.
area, and the energy will move.
Yeah.
But that's again if the sentry, if the guardian is resting a little bit, if the sentry that has been empowered to say that, well, you have to touch my clit, or he has to have a dick that's this big, or I only like it from this position, or all these different things that we tell ourselves that's the only way that we can be pleasure, or I can only I can only orgasm if I'm in a committed relationship, or is all these different things that the century has been programmed to say that I'm only going to allow pleasure if it's this. I'm only going to allow love to be felt if it's this. When
Mm,
that starts to relax, then you don't even maybe you might not have to massage the point. You could just touch it or even think about it, and the energy will flow through it.
absolutely. I think I remember you talking about, like, at your workshop where I met you, that I don't know if you were with the Tantra master where he would just hug her and she would just start crying and go
Yes.
from like tears to like orgasm. Because I've seen videos where tantric masters would simply just hold them and they would have a kundalini awakening. And it's interesting because I'm starting to experiencing it now, where I'll literally just be breathing and I'll just be turned on just by the music or just by the breathing. And it's beautiful to just have that. And for me, it's like the more that I trust myself, the more that I feel my own sensuality, the more I accept and allow, right? The allowance. You're gonna have higher states of pleasure, higher states of bliss, you know. You're gonna feel high.
For sure.
And again, I that relates a lot to the heart. Most people that are not able to have that, they say, I have a closed heart, I'm emotionally unavailable, I'm detached, I have to wait, I'm going through something. I feel like when people say that, it really affects their fire center. And again, I'm still learning about the meridians, but I'm still developing my theory around this.
I think that's the best way to do it. Like I went to school around it, and I honor the teachings that I learned from, but the system that I'm actually teaching the men that come through the program or the couples that we work with, um, the way that I run the energy is different than any way that I was ever taught. This is the way it has come through me, my own inner and under and overstanding of it. And I love so what you said right there is that you're still working on your theory of it. We read the book or whatever, but then try it in real life and see if that speaks to you still. It may be a little bit different for you. You know, one of the things that the mind wants to do is to say that, okay, the heart chakra does this, and we need to show up and see if that's really true for us in our inner and understanding. Um, I would be remiss if I didn't say that it's 6:54, and I think they only give you an hour on Instagram Live. So I just wanted to point that out. I'm enjoying
Yeah.
the conversation, but I don't
Yeah,
want to just
no, of course. I would
yeah, I
love
don't want to
I would
abruptly
love
cut
to
on that.
jam more on how the elements affect the how, the sexual energy, because that's something that I'm working on, is my theory. And the more that I practice this, the more that I'm like, I don't know, this is play for me. Like this is my play. My fire is all about being a sapiosexual, discovering. That's my way of playing. And so I guess we'll just wrap this up in a nice bow.
Yeah.
And just hear, like, is there anything that you want to say? You know, you've mentioned your program, but is there anything else you want to talk about in regards to S.E.X, sensual, energetic, and then the X factor, right?
Yeah. Yep. Sensual emotional exchange. Yeah.
Sensual, emotional. See, I
Yeah, but that's the one that works for you, so that's fine too. I've seen sacred energy exchange. I like that too. The reason why I went with sensual emotional exchange because that's just kind of myself. I like to come up with my own things too. but I like the sacred energy exchange. But for me, sensual emotional exchange says, okay, if I say sacred energy exchange, well, what is that sacred energy? And so I took it another level down to give it, because I was really just trying in my book, you know, to help people get the concepts. So I say sensual because, again, sensual is the body, the physical body. The emotional is the feelings. And you talked about, you know, like the Zhang Fu theory, or the theory with the Chinese medicine, is that each one of the organs has a different propensity to hold a soil, or quote unquote negative emotion, and a positive or soul emotion. And so when we start to learn that, we can start to know how to run the energy through ourselves. We can even learn how to give an orgasmic hug at that point, you know, or do it through Zoom, because we don't even have to be in the same places. So we really get to start playing with it when we expand our consciousness about who we are. And that's really what, and I'll leave on that note, is that sensual emotional exchange, true sex, is the, you know, the sensual is the roots. It's the stuff that goes down into the ground, the roots, it goes into the soil. And then the emotional is kind of us branching up, the stem or the bark coming up. And then the consciousness is the flowers and the fruits. That's the X. That's once the thing has come into its full being. But you can't have one without the other.
Oh, I love that. I love what you just painted, that picture where soil is like the emotions on the scale of consciousness. That would be like below 500, you know, that's like fear, guilt, shame. And then neutrality would be like just harmony, balance, and that's the emotions, you know, climbing up that ladder. And then finally the X factor, it's like the thoughts, the insights, the passion, the creativity, the play, the conversations. That's what I see.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yes, in closing out, you said to let them know if there's anything. I have the new program for men, Chi Up, and that's based on, you know, helping men in different ways to learn how to run their energy. Or so if you have questions about that, you can reach out. I'll be doing some videos and stuff and putting that on my page as I start to promote that. The classes will start on July 15th. And then I also have another program I'm excited about that Kirti and me are doing, is racism. And
yes, I would love to have Kirti on here too.
Yeah, no, definitely, definitely got to have Kirti on too.
Yeah.
Racism actually is using the meridian channel theory, but going through racism with it. So real quick, and I'll leave on this note, is that the A in racism is about awareness, and so that one kind of goes up. The A goes up above the rest of the letters, and then the other letters in racism, the R is for racism. The C is for classism. The I is for intellectualism. The S is for sexism. And the M is for materialism. And using the Zhang Fu theory, or the meridian theory, we see where we embody racism, or we embody classism, intellectualism, sexism, and materialism. Where do we ourselves, whether we're the oppressor or the oppressed, whether we are the disempowered or the empowered, whether we're the privileged or the underprivileged, we still play into it one way or the other.
Yeah.
So looking in ourselves to see, so that we can stop perpetuating it. So those are the programs that I'm excited about.
Thank you.
And I appreciate you, Erikaa, for making room for this, for creating the womb space for this, and allowing and asking me to come on. It was an honor. And I appreciate the work that you're doing. So I want you to know I see you as well.
Thank you. And Kirti, if she's watching, I would love to have you on. Again, thank you everyone for watching, and I appreciate you. I definitely feel like we're gonna see each other again. Plus, we're so local. So again, thank you, Shophar.
Ashe. Peace.
Bye.